Welcome to We All Need Each Other, the podcast from Transformation Ministries.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much for coming back on with us. I'm so thankful that you're here, that we get to have this conversation. Let's just start right away by you introducing yourself. Who are you? What do you do? How do you know about transformation? All those good things.
Yeah. So I'm Michael Baughman, and I live in Mishawaka, so not too far from Transformation, and been married for about 4.5 years to Laura. And I'm trying to think. So recently I graduated with my master's in spiritual formation, and I'm working on a certificate in spiritual direction, which is what we're talking about today. So I'm excited to get into that. And so I've been a part of Transformation. I think this is I was trying to remember. I think it's my 6th year as a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known about it since the beginning. I was a Bethel student when Corey started everything. And it's been a great experience being a mentor, and I've loved it so much. And so more about me, I guess. Right now I'm working at an autism center. So I work with children with autism. We have kids from 2 to, I guess, until they're teenagers, really. Most of the kids in our center are under 10. And so I just provide one-on-one therapy with them. And I've been there for about 4.5 years as well. So I think I've been doing that job since I got married.
Okay.
And I've learned so much from that job. It's been great. And I'm also in a band that Aaron Charles is our manager, who's unfortunately not with us because of COVID, but he's been doing a great job, and that's been really fun. We've had a lot of shows this fall, and we have an album coming out soon, which is exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. It's a fun side kind of hobby for me, and I also love spending a lot of time in nature and going on hikes. And Laura and I love doing that, just going to new places and exploring, and wherever we can do that. That's a little bit about me.
Before we go any further, what's the name of your band?
We're called Joe Baughman and the Righteous Few. So That's my brother's name, and then the Righteous Few. So I'm one of the Righteous Few.
You're one of the Righteous Few. That's good. We'll definitely put a link to the band in the show notes, and hopefully people will keep an eye on you guys and buy the album when it comes out, or make it to a show. I'd love to get to a show one of these days. That'd be fun.
That'd be great.
So the topic of today's discussion is we're going to focus in on your most recent education, spiritual formation and spiritual direction. What is spiritual direction, and what got you interested in it?
So I just had to change locations really quick, but feel a little out of breath. So I'm trying to think. My introduction to spiritual direction kind of came through my interest and passion with spiritual formation, which started kind of early on when I was at Bethel, actually about 10 years ago, just through some different people I met there. My mentor, Christian Mihu, and then another mentor, Courtney Richards, I met when I was at Bethel, and they're kind of just kind of introduced me to spiritual formation and what that looks like, spiritual disciplines. And so I was really interested after I graduated, just kind of exploring that. And that led me to some writers like Thomas Merton and Henry Nouwen, who talk a lot about spiritual direction. And Thomas Merton was a spiritual director. And so I was just curious about that. And then COVID kind of came, and I had already been thinking about my master's, and I discovered George Fox, Portland Seminary, and they had a formation and direction, a program that you could do. And it was kind of like the spiritual direction part was kind of like, if you're curious in this, you can just do some electives and explore it. So as I kind of got to know it, I just became really excited about the idea of providing space for somebody that has questions or just wants to dive deeper into their faith. And I think that's something I've been passionate about for a while. In my different experiences working at Prairie Camp and Lifeline and Elkhart, I've always enjoyed kind of walking alongside not just the kids that we're working with, but also the volunteers and the counselors. So I think there's some of that interest that kind of moved me into that space as well. That really got me excited, and yeah, it's like just kind of a new way to meet with individuals and talk about their faith.
So I'm not as familiar with spiritual direction. I'm more familiar with things like mentoring. Maybe like a pastor would do counseling with somebody in their church. So can you kind of compare and contrast those different things that other people might be more familiar with?
Yeah. So when I think about mentoring, it's like, I think of it more of like I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. I guess in direction, there's more confidentiality, more boundaries. It's kind of set, like meeting once a month. And like I mentioned before, it's not necessarily a space for me to give it like advice and things like that. It's more question based and trying to kind of listen to those things. Whereas mentoring I see as kind of like a journey through everyday life with somebody. So inviting somebody into like having a meal with them, going shopping with them, like at ISI I like to go and watch my mentee play basketball or just kind of participating in those things, but also walking with them and helping them through whatever stage of life they're in. And I think there's a place for both of those things for sure. And then with like pastoral counseling, I think it's a little different too, just the role of the pastor, which I think this is also important for people to do. But yeah, it's like you're meeting with your pastor, and which is great. But sometimes you might have frustrations with your church or with the Bible or with God, and that might not feel as safe. To talk to your pastor about that. You might want a space that's removed, and sometimes you can be very far removed. You can meet with people on Zoom and meet with somebody that knows nothing about your context, and just that's a very open and free space to talk about anything. And I think a big difference between counseling, pastoral counseling, and spiritual direction. So I think those are some of the biggest things. But yeah, like I said, I think there's room for all of those things in a person's life. I know it can be hard. People have busy schedules, but I think the more community and people you can invite into your life, that I think the better, and it helps with growth and transformation. And and I would say, like, for me as a director, it's a lot. It means a lot to me as well. It's like every person I meet with provides me with something that helps me to grow, because God is in that space. So yeah.
Can you kind of describe what a typical session with a spiritual director would be like? Yeah.
So it really depends from person to person, but typically it's once a month, just for an hour. And I try to keep most directors will try to keep it pretty strict to an hour, just for boundaries. And it's really just dependent on the person. So some people like to start with some silence or prayer, and to kind of get focused in that way. Some people like come prepared with things they want to talk about. Other people come with nothing, and they just maybe in the silence something comes up for them, or some people just need to talk through. So someone might just talk for 20 minutes, and then they get to the place where they're like, oh, this is kind of what's going on. And in that space, a lot of it, like I said, I try to listen as much as I can and ask questions that will help the person dive deeper into their own experience. And it's hard sometimes because things will come up. For me, just like in any conversation, it's easy to like find the things you relate to, or jump to assumptions about what the person might be going through. And so for me, on my end, I try to we do a thing in spiritual direction called bracketing. So I try to kind of bracket it in my head and set it to the side to kind of explore later. I meet with the supervisor as well. So in my supervision, those are the things that I explore. Why was this coming up for me when they mentioned it? So in a session, it's really all about trying to notice God, where God is at in that person's journey. And for me, not to assume or try to tell them where God is at, but hopefully trusting that the Spirit will reveal that to them. And so sometimes there's a lot of silence, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's great. Other times there's a lot of talking and lots of questions. And we usually end with prayer, or just kind of noticing like what was going on in this hour. Where can I go from here? So that's like a typical session. But like I said, it looks very different from person to person, which is pretty normal.
Yeah. I'd like to hear more about you talked about the bracketing and how you have to be constantly aware of your own things that are going on inside of you, and and still try to maintain the focus on what's going on with the person you're meeting with. So just talk to me a little bit more about what you've learned and how you approach that.
Yeah. So I think it's a beautiful skill, not just in direction, but just in life in general. When you're trying to meet with someone and listen to them, I think it really helps us to listen well. I think, it's easy for us to kind of jump to the things we're familiar with, or to maybe something's triggering for us and we want to share our position and try to prevent or change somebody. But that's not always actually very helpful. And being able to put those things to the side and maybe explore them with a friend later, or like for me in direction, supervisor or my own spiritual director. If you're just having a conversation with somebody, maybe eventually a time will come where you can kind of share where you're at. I was thinking even this morning, I was thinking how little, or just trying to think how often we respond to somebody with either some space, like some silence, or a question, especially if we don't agree with them. And I was reading something the other day, and it was just saying like, listening to somebody doesn't mean you agree with them. But it's very, I don't know, it helps us to see the belovedness in them, and that God is in them, and treat them as a fellow human rather than kind of it's dehumanizing to not feel heard. And I think the bracketing can help. Obviously none of us is perfect, so those things kind of come out. Even for me in direction, sometimes I'll notice like after that, I was kind of my questions were kind of leading because I was curious about something personally. But I think it's really important for listening well for anybody, even as a mentor too. I think those questions can be good too, and maybe starting with a question, or some silence, which can be really awkward, but sometimes it just happens because I don't know, you don't know where to go, but it's a beautiful thing. And I think it helps for the other person to feel loved and seen and heard, rather than feeling like we're just trying to fix them or change them or something as quickly as we can.
I do feel like that's for a lot of us, me included, that's kind of a skill that I haven't worked much on in a conversation, really placing a high value on what the other person's saying, and practicing that by listening, not listening to respond, but listening to understand, and stay curious in the conversation, because so often we want to jump to like, oh, you think that, well, I think this, even if it's not a disagreement, even we just want to make it a good conversation and get our side out there or our thoughts out there. But when you've been in conversations where someone is just listening intently and asking you tons of questions and very curious, you feel so valued by that. So that's man, that's a great thing for all of us to keep in mind next time we have
Yeah.
a chance. Just try to really focus on the person in front of you and where they're at, and explore. Just keep
Yeah.
digging deeper into where they're at. So
Mm.
that's really
Yeah, and
good.
it takes practice and
Mhm.
repetition, like anything. Listening, yeah, I think, I mean, I've been doing direction for just about a year, and I'm definitely nowhere close to being, I don't know that you can be an expert in direction, but like it's something we're always going to be growing in, and just to pay attention to. And I would even challenge people to, yeah, try it out. Just try to, even if you're talking to a spouse or a really close friend, when they share something, instead of jumping in with a comment, just try to ask a question to dive deeper into that experience, see what they're feeling or what they noticed about something that happened. Or it's a beautiful thing, and it's incredible. Even like talking with Laura sometimes, like if I'm able to be more present and do that, it's amazing. The things you learn about people that you think you know really well when you're not assuming things all the time, or leaving space.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay, so for someone who might hear about spiritual direction, or even has listened up to this point, and maybe they're thinking, oh, I don't think I really need that. Like it all sounds kind of mysterious, kind of like whatever. Like it's not something I'm used to. I haven't tried that before. What would you say to someone who's like skeptical?
Yeah, I think I would challenge them just to try it. To sit down with a director, and most directors will do like an introductory session where you can kind of just get to know them, their heart, where they're at, learn more about what direction is for them. And so I would say that first. I think that's a great place to start. If you like to read, there's lots of resources out there to learn more about it. But yeah, I would say just kind of, I don't know, kind of experiencing it for yourself. Sometimes we hear a lot of things and we get ideas in our head about what something is like. And it can, something like spiritual formation or spiritual direction can feel kind of scary, or maybe not even Christian to some people. And I would just challenge people to sit down with somebody and talk about it. Even without the expectation of actually starting it, but maybe just having a conversation.
Who's a typical? I think I know how you're going to answer this, but who's a typical person who might benefit from spiritual direction?
Honestly, I would say anybody can. Honestly, yeah, anybody, even if the person's not necessarily a Christian. If they're curious about God, or even if they don't like the word God, just maybe the divine or something like that. If they're genuinely curious, I think it's a space to come. And people that maybe have some church hurt, or maybe everything, like they love church and everything's going great, it's still a good space to sit and explore. And I think in everyone's life is filled with like great things and challenges and suffering. And I'm only 30, but the older that I get, the more I just kind of notice like how inevitable suffering and loss and grief are. And it's not good to go through those things on your own. The more people you can invite in to that journey, the better, I think. And ultimately, we're inviting, hopefully in each of those spaces, you're inviting God as well to walk with you and journey with you. I would say it's really for anybody. I would say maybe the only person, which, I wouldn't turn them away, but it's not a place to come and debate and try to change my mind or something like that. Like I don't, the focus shouldn't, I don't want it to be on me or what it is. I would hope it'd be someone would come that's curious, basically, and desiring some sort of deeper relationship or renewal too.
So what I'm hearing is, in the way I'm processing this is, to me it sounds like potentially meeting with the spiritual director is a tool that would help me grow in my spiritual maturity and my discipleship. It's just another avenue to explore understanding who God is, what God's doing in my life, how to live out my faith, all those things. And so in my mind, that's for everybody. That's for anybody who wants to, especially people who are seeking to live out their faith fully and grow in their discipleship. I think it's a great option. If someone wants to get started on this, how would they get started?
Yeah, so you can just search spiritual directors. There's an organization called Spiritual Directors International, where you can find lists of people. Sometimes it's hard. Not everyone's on there. I mean, I'm open to meeting with people as well. And there's a few other people I know of in the area. If someone's interested in meeting in person, I know of other organizations and people that if somebody's interested in meeting with someone outside of the community, there's that too. And I'm sure the other directors in the area have resources like that as well. I know there's a few in Goshen, and I'm not sure I think there might be one other guy that I know of in South Bend. There's probably a lot more. It's just not everyone some people kind of do it just by word of mouth, which is kind of where I'm at right now. Others, have a broader, like a website and things like that. And I'm sure if you search it, you can find you can find people. And yeah, like I said, you can meet with people anywhere in the world, really. And yeah, which is great. So I meet with the director and we just we've been meeting on Zoom for almost 3 years now. And for me, it's been an incredible space on my journey to have somebody that doesn't really know my community, my context. And yeah, it just feels very open and just a very open and loving space for me to process things.
Yeah. So we'll put some links on the show notes. But also I'm gonna throw this out there, and you can say no if it's a no, but would you be open to, if someone just is like curious about this and wants to maybe explore it, would you be open to them contacting you and then you kind of help them figure out, is this someone that you want to meet with, or connect them with someone else? Would you be open to that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to, if someone's curious, just to grab coffee or even just meeting on Zoom with somebody, if that feels more comfortable. I'd be happy to just kind of process things with people and see where they want to go from there.
Okay. All right. So we'll make sure we have Michael's contact information as well. So Aaron's not here, like you said, but I can't get out of here without asking the question that Aaron loves to ask everybody. What is fascinating you right now in your life? It could be a big thing, small thing. It's really open-ended. What's fascinating you right now?
Yeah. So I think for me right now, I've been really fascinated and kind of challenged by kind of the idea of just slowing down and being more present. I love fall and the changing colors, and I find myself more motivated to get outside and kind of take in the last bit of sunlight before the days get really short, and take in all the colors before all the leaves fall down. And yeah, I've just been really challenged for that space. And in my reading and schooling and things like that, I just feel really, I kind of believe that, that space, that open, empty space is a great space to meet God. Whether we hear from God or not, I think there's beauty in kind of just walking with God in silence. And that really, I don't know, it really creates some open space for us to learn a lot about ourselves. And it can be really uncomfortable and painful even. But I think it's worth the journey. And yeah, I actually brought this time, I figured I would bring a couple of quotes from books that I love.
Nice. Yeah.
If that's okay. That I find are really helpful with this idea of presence. And yeah, I've just been finding that connect really well with what I desire for my own direction and faith walk, and what I hope to help other people enter into. And so for the first one, it comes from a book called The Pilgrim Tinker Creek. This is probably one of my favorite books that by Annie Dillard, and I read it every couple of years. But there's a line in here that I find myself constantly returning to. And she writes, "Experiencing the present purely is being emptied and hollow. You catch grace as a man fills his cup under a waterfall." And so I just love that picture of when you're actually in the present moment, like, I don't know, you're not full of distractions and what's next or what you've done, but you're present to God. And then in that moment you receive grace, like a person, I don't know, if you just picture like any waterfall and trying to fill like a little glass under that, just how insane that would be, how the water would just be overflowing at an immense rate. I just think it's such a beautiful picture of what being present can really do for a person. And yeah, if I have time, I'll share one more from Henry Nouwen, who's probably my other favorite writer. He kind of sums up, I feel like, this idea of presence and creating that empty space, and kind of my goal as a director and what I hope to provide for other people and what I hope that other people hope to provide for the people they see in their lives as well. So he writes, he's talking about hospitality specifically, but which I think is something that we experience in everyday life, whether we're just meeting a stranger on the street or at the grocery store or having dinner with their family. So he writes, "Hospitality, therefore, means primarily the creation of a free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom not disturbed by dividing lines. It is not to lead our neighbor into a corner where there are no alternatives left, but to open a wide spectrum of options for choice and commitment. It is not an educated intimidation with good books, good stories, and good works, but the liberation of fearful hearts so that words can find roots and bear ample fruit. It is not a method of making our God and our way into the criteria of happiness, but the opening of an opportunity to others to find their God in their way. The paradox of hospitality is that it wants to create emptiness, not a fearful emptiness, but a friendly emptiness where strangers can enter and discover themselves as created free. Free to sing their own songs, speak their own languages, dance their own dances, free also to leave and follow their own vocations. Hospitality is not a subtle invitation to adopt the lifestyle of the host, but the gift of a chance for the guest to find his own." And I think that quote, I know it's long. I could just read the whole book, but it's called Reaching Out. It's one of my favorites by him. But yeah, just that idea. It's so easy for us to, I don't know, we want to change people. We want people to agree with us and to be on our side. And we have our passions and rightfully so too. But there's so much beauty in creating that empty space, listening, allowing someone to express themselves how they need to express themselves, to speak freely in their language. There's just so much beauty in that idea. And I think I've been very challenged by that lately. Life is hard and we have people we disagree with and we feel frustrated by, and spaces where we're frustrated, but it's like, I really want to be a person of love and peace. And I hope that I can do that. And kind of, I don't know, I feel like our world and culture is very divisive right now, and just seeking ways of how can we combat this, especially as Christians. I feel like Christians are just constantly going after each other, and I don't know. I know that's a lot, but it's been on my heart and in my head a lot. So it's something I've been trying to process, and I love, just the name of this podcast, I think, is so beautiful that we all need each other. We all have something to offer. We're all created in God's image. We're all beloved. What can we learn from each other? How can we work together to love the people of the world? So I love that, the name of I've used that in papers for school, honestly. I should probably tag you guys or put you guys in that. But
royalties someday when you write a book. And yeah.
Yeah.
No, Michael, it's a really good thought. I appreciate you taking the time to share that. I think it is an important thing, especially where we're at right now in the world and in our culture and in the church. I think that you've given us a lot to think about, a lot to put into practice, whether it's just being better listeners, um, seeing our need for other people to help us in many ways, um, the possibility that someone else can help us grow spiritually. Those are all such good things to be thinking about and considering whether that's something that we want to apply to our own lives. So I appreciate your time today. Appreciate
Yeah.
all the resources that you laid out there.
Yeah.
And I hope that some people will take you up on your offer to go down this road of spiritual direction with them, whether it's with you personally or someone else that you know of. So thanks for your time today, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Dan.